Need a credit card? Credit is needed for a lot of the larger adult moves made in life. Whether it's applying for a house, a car, internet service, phone service, or even just applying for a basic loan, you need some form of credit in order to do this independently. In this video, I will be telling you how to get your first credit card, as well as explaining a few of the major things that you need to know about holding a credit card. Now, before I go over how to get your first credit card, I wanted to go over the factors that most affect your credit score and how you can keep them in check so that whenever the time comes, you have fire credit. And I also want to remind you to smash the like button. It really helps to support the channel. Now, there are 5 factors that make up your overall credit score, and the first and the most important overall, that's going to account for the largest portion of your credit score, is going to be your payment history. This is basically just paying things on time and making sure you're at least paying the minimum payment. This accounts for 35% of your score, so it's going to be much larger than the other 4 factors. This is absolutely the most important. All your credit cards, every loan, everything, make sure you're at least, if you can't pay it off in full, make sure you're at least paying off the minimum payments, because once you miss a payment on anything, it's going to dramatically hurt your credit score, and it's going to take some time to really get that fixed, and it'll never quite be the same once you miss a payment. It'll really take years to kind of recover. So yeah, just make sure you make your payments for your cards on time, your loans, all your bills. Make sure you're paying things on time. Don't be somebody who's not paying stuff on time. And if you're that kind of person, maybe credit cards aren't for you. I'll be real. Credit cards are not going to be for everyone. Credit cards and the credit score are kind of like a symbol of responsibility, how responsible of a borrower you are. If you can't responsibly borrow and pay back, you don't need to mess with credit at all, and you're probably better off going some other way that won't kind of destroy you financially. That being said, accidents do happen. People are not perfect. If you do make a payment like a day or two late, or something happened and you couldn't pay it on time, and you let the company know, they'll usually be forgiving and kind of waive that, and they won't really hit your account with like a late payment notice. But just make sure that you're in talks with the company and that they know, because you definitely do not want to have that missing payment. Moral of the story, do what you got to do to make sure all your payments are paid. Whether you have to do Uber Eats, sell something on Facebook, do what you got to do and make sure you have the payment history in check, because again, that is the most important factor. Number 2 on the list of things that you need to kind of keep in mind whenever you have a credit card, it's going to kind of fall right in line with paying things on time, and this is going to be credit utilization. For those of you who don't know what credit utilization is, it's going to be what percentage of your total credit is used up. So for instance, if you have $10,000 of credit to your name and you have $5,000 used up, that is going to be a 50% utilization. And just so you know, anything over 30% utilization of your credit is going to be bad. So along with making your payments on time, you also want to have your balance kind of as low as possible. If you can have it at 0, if you can just buy something and then pay it off immediately, that is going to be ideal if you can buy and pay something off immediately. But it's not necessarily always the case. So yeah, try to keep that utilization as low as you can. Anything below 30 is considered good. Below 30 is good. Below 10 is better, and 0% utilization is best. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Whenever you need to apply for something, make sure that your credit utilization is low, because while it is high, you will find that you will get rejected more and more. There will be less people who want to lend to you because it looks like you may not be able to pay off all your credit. But unlike payment history, this is something that kind of varies from month to month. Having a high utilization 1 month is not going to destroy you for your lifetime if you pay it off the next month, as long as it's paid off whenever you actually need to apply for credit. I'm not sure if I said it yet, but credit utilization accounts for about 30% of your score. So right there under payment history, it still takes up a fat amount of your credit score. So that's also something that you're going to want to keep down. The third factor that you're going to want to have in check is going to be the age of your credit. And this simply means, how long have you had credit? Actually, it doesn't simply mean how long have you had credit. It is actually consisted of the average age of your credit. So this means if you had a credit card that you've had open for 5 years and you just opened up a brand new loan that is in your name, your average age of credit will now be 2.5 years, splitting the difference between the 5 years and the 1 day. So one thing that's kind of one thing to consider whenever you're applying for new credit is your average age will drop whenever you apply for new credit. Typically things start looking good after about 2 or 3 years once you start getting into those higher credit scores, but it's not out of the ordinary for people to kind of push into those higher credit scores with the help of some others, like within their first 6 months or so. That being said, you don't want to acquire too much credit at once, just because this will give you a really low age, unless you're starting out in the beginning, and that way your age is low anyway, so it can only get better from there on out. All that being said, there is one other thing you need to know about the age of your credit that is going to be important, and that is whenever any of your lines are closed. So for instance, in the example we used earlier, if you had that, still have that 1 day loan, but you decided, I don't use this credit card that I've had for 5 years anymore, I want to close it out. If you close out your account, your average age of your credit drops down to 1 day, which is what that loan was. So that's going to be something you need to consider. I personally would not recommend closing any of your accounts. If it happens to be an account with an annual fee, there's often ways that you can work out something. You can change to a different product, like a different credit card that doesn't have an annual fee with the same company. A lot of companies will let you do that, but do what you can to not have to close the account, because that will dramatically affect the age of your credit. And the age of your credit, while not as major as your utilization and your payment history, it accounts for 15% of your score. So it does have a pretty decent effect on your credit score. The fourth factor, and not quite as important, but it is definitely something that you want to look towards as you have credit over a longer time span, is going to be your credit mix. And this is going to be just having different kinds of credit. So this means like having student loans, home loans, car loans, having different loans, different kinds of credit cards. The more kinds of borrowing that you're doing, the better it looks for your credit mix. It shows that you're responsible and capable of dealing with different kinds of credit, and this accounts for 10% of your score. There's not really much else I have to say about that. Just over time, that is something that kind of helps to boost your score, and it's good to have a good mix of credit. And the last, but certainly not least, is going to be credit inquiries. These are something that affects your credit more short term, usually within the time span of 6 months to a year is really when they matter, but they will stay on your report for up to 2 years just being there. But typically after a year, the number is still there, but it doesn't really matter that they're on your report after a year. Inquiries are what happens when someone pulls your credit and looks at your credit to see if they're going to give you a card or a loan or anything like that. So ideally, every time you get an inquiry, you should get some new form of credit. So if you apply for a credit card, you get an inquiry and you get the card, that's okay. But if you apply for a credit card, you get an inquiry and you get rejected, that really hurts, because the more inquiries you have, that shows that you are applying for a bunch of credit, and the higher it goes, it really just looks kind of sketchy to the different lenders. Typically having like 1 to 2 inquiries every 6 months is okay. It's better to have it closer, maybe 1 or none at all. But once you get over 2, you may be kind of pushing it in a 6-month time frame. But yeah, make sure that when you apply for something, when you get an inquiry, you're fairly confident about it, fairly confident that that inquiry won't go to waste. And inquiries were the last factor that make up your credit score. Inquiries account for 10% of your score. And again, the more you get in a short time frame, the worse it'll look. And now that we've gone over the factors that you need to be aware of when you have a credit card, now I feel comfortable telling you what you need to do, how to get your first credit card. So there are actually 3 ways you can go about this. There are 3 unique situations, and there are going to be 2 that are ideal. So I'll actually start out with those because a lot of you are going to be in that boat, but they're going to be the last one's going to be a boat that some of you may feel the most comfortable with. So yeah, we'll kind of talk about it in that order. So the first one's going to depend on you having a family member, a friend, somebody that you're close to that trusts you and you trust, that has good credit already and has already had it for a good amount of time. The more time that they've had it, the better it'll look for you, because all they have to do is add you as an authorized user, which basically puts you on their account, and you don't have to spend any money on their account, but it adds to your credit history. And in order to be an authorized user, typically you will need to give them your social security, birthday, and they'll have to put in your name, and then they can add you as an authorized user for their cards. And you're not required to spend any money or use the card at all. It really just helps you out and gives you credit history. And if you're able to do that, it's going to be one of the best ways to kind of get started on your credit, because typically after like a month or so, it shows up on your credit report, and you can typically go apply for some entry-level cards with some good banks if whoever added you as an authorized user had okay credit. So that was the first way. The second way is going to be geared towards those of you in college, and also may work for some of you that aren't in college if you start a new relationship with certain banks. So for those of you in college, a majority of you are already typically in a lot of debt due to the high cost of college. And a lot of credit card companies see this as an amazing time for acquisitions. So they are incredibly lenient with the application process when it comes to students in college. So if you're in college, you probably get a lot of credit card offers in the mail. I know I did. When I didn't really have too much credit built up. Typically companies like Discover, I really don't remember the other name, but there were a lot of companies offering credit cards, and honestly going with any of those credit card companies and getting accepted by one kind of helps to get your foot in the door in the credit card world, and just showing that you can be responsible with that one card will really help you out. So yeah, being a student really helps you to get your foot in the door. It usually makes it a lot easier for you to get approved for certain cards like student cards. And if you're not a student, a lot of times if you go to a new bank and you kind of create a relationship with them, make some deposits and whatnot, after a couple months, if you ask if they have any credit cards that you can get, a lot of times going into the bank you'll have a pretty good chance of getting approved, just because they see the money you have coming in, the money you have going out, and if you look financially responsible to them, you'll have pretty good odds of being approved for a credit card. And last but certainly not least, the final and probably the most annoying way to get a credit card, but you gotta do it sometimes, is going to be to get a secured credit card. A secured credit card is basically a credit card funded by you. So these are going to be a lot easier to get just because it's funded by you. So for instance, if you want a credit card with if you're just trying to get a credit card, you can give a bank like $300. You will have a $300 limit, and it'll typically be against the money you borrowed. So say you gave the bank $300, you have a card with the $300 limit. You go on to make minor purchases, pay for your gas, stuff like that, and at the end of each month you pay it off. Typically after a few months they'll give you your money back, and you'll still have the same limit, and this is good for building your history. And again, after those few months, you'll be able to apply for a real non-secured credit card and, you know, kind of get your foot in the door to start getting some real credit. Now that you've heard and learned all that, you should be ready to go out and go get your first credit card. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, please make sure to smash the like button. It really helps to support the channel on this journey to 1 million subscribers. If I said something you didn't understand, or you have any questions or comments, hey, feel free to leave them down below in the comments and I will get back to each and every one of you. And last but certainly not least, thank you so much for watching and peace.